visiting a friend. Start that again. 3 years after my own divorce, I was. It happened to be the weekend of my divorce anniversary, and it was Rosh Chodesh Elul. It was the first day of the month of Elul, which is the month before Rosh Hashanah. And for those of you who know, the month before the Rosh Hashanah is like it's like a whole preparation month, a spiritual preparation month to begin setting the record straight and seeking forgiveness from your friends and your loved ones. And it was a very auspicious day to get divorced. But it was 3 years later, and it was Rosh Chodesh Elul. It was at the beginning of that month. And I was at a friend's ufruf. Raise your hand if you've never heard of an ufruf. It's a Yiddish word for the Shabbat, the weekend before somebody gets married. They get a special blessing in synagogue. And so a friend of mine was getting married, another rabbi, and she invited me to her community just to be there. But of course, when you're a guest rabbi, they ask you to do things. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to do anything. I don't want to bring any attention to the fact that it's my divorce anniversary because I'm thinking about it. And it's an ufruf. Someone's about to get married. The last thing you want to do is infect someone's marital energy and excitement with your divorce Debbie Downer energy. So I kept saying no, no, thank you. I'll be a Jew in the pew, as they say. And so the ofruf was lovely, and it wasn't until afterwards on Saturday afternoon at the kiddush. We're just having a bite to eat after the service, and the rabbi comes up to me one more time. It's like, just say the blessing over the wine, and I said, okay, fine, I'll say the blessing over the wine, but I warned you, it's not a good idea. Earlier in the service, that she had asked people to mention their milestones, like and someone's like, well, my son just went off to college, my grandfather just had his 90th birthday, whatever it was. People were sharing their milestones, and I was like, I kept my hand down. I'm not going to share my milestone. But she gave me the cup of wine, and like a rabbi, rabbi gonna be rabbi. I said, okay, I'm gonna share my milestone. And everything in my brain was saying, don't do this, don't do this. But I did it anyway. I said, I'm going to share my milestone with you. And when I say it, you just say Mazel Tov. So I said, today is 3 years since my divorce, my 3-year divorce anniversary. And everybody goes, Mazel Tov. And I thought it would just be silly. There were probably like 20 people at this kiddush at this point. I thought nothing would come of it. 6 different people came up to me afterwards saying, I've never heard anyone talk about their divorce in synagogue before. Let me tell you about my situation. Let me tell you about my situation. Let me tell you about my high conflict divorce. Let me tell you about my weird child custody arrangement. Let me tell you about the lawyer that I hired. Like all of a sudden people were showering me with their divorce stories. It was like half the room had come over and needed to tell me. I was just shocked that it was like what I thought was such a bad idea ended up being like a balm, a BALM balm. Like some people needed to like tell their stories. So like, what did I get out of that? What did I learn from that? That Jewish spaces, even the most welcoming ones, this was a Reconstructionist community, have often been inhospitable to the population of people going through divorce. And what can we do to be more hospitable to that population? Why were these people so desperate to tell me what happened? It was just I was so surprised that there was such a hunger to like it was borderline inappropriate. They were sharing things with me that you would only share behind closed doors, and other people were around. They had never had a space to talk about, to hear the word divorce as a normal thing in public, in a public religious place. It felt like it wasn't appropriate to mention even the word divorce, even though half the people in the room had been through it themselves. So that was a kind of a seminal moment for me where I realized, okay, there's a need here. People are hungry. People have stories to tell. People have parts of themselves that have been shut down and and turned off and deemed inappropriate. And yeah, telling your divorce story isn't totally appropriate in many contexts, but there should be contexts where it is appropriate. Um, so I think I mentioned earlier that I started last week. I talked about the organization I started that's called Jews Get Divorce, where we support, destigmatize, and educate the Jewish community, those who are going through that life stage. And last week I kind of focused more on education. This week I'm going to talk more about destigmatizing. What would it look like? I think it's funny to even say that because I think a lot of people wouldn't even think it needs that. But my experience has taught me, and from talking to people, I talk to divorced Jews all the time, is that we don't even know how shut down we are on this topic. So the question I'm always asked is, well, what can communities actually do? What can they do for this population? And I'm also going to focus on rituals tonight. I was like, what can communities do, and what do supportive rituals look like? That's kind of my focus tonight. And so I typically look, well, what are the rabbis doing? What are the rabbis doing? I actually am doing research, looking up what has my movement been talking about? How have they kind of addressed the divorce issue? And the number one thing I see is this old category called a mamzer. Anyone know what that is? It's the category of a bastard child. That if you don't have a divorce and you get married and have another child, that kid has a category. He's like somehow not a whole child because he was born out of wedlock. Not out of wedlock, but while someone was in was already taken and not fully separated. This is an old category that doesn't have a lot of cachet in the world today, but it's kind of the thing that Reconstructionist rabbis were most concerned with. Meanwhile, like almost no very small percentage of the congregants and the constituents are even thinking about that category, about being a mamzer, being being a child born of another parents, and that's the main issue that the movement was grappling with. And I'm thinking that can't be it. That can't be the focus of divorce. I mean, it's such a small slice of the pie of what someone's going through is their religious status in the community as a parent. That's basically what it's talking about. It's your religious status as a parent. Is that what rabbis are offering? Because so what's happening to you? What's happening to somebody when you're getting divorced? What are the things that are going on? What are the possible changes? It could be a seismic shift in somebody's life. Your home could change. You can lose your home, or you may not live in your home, or people that used to live in your home don't live in your home, or you have to sell your house. That's very common, right? Money changes, your financial status, your socioeconomic status changes. Your friend circles can often change. People you were friends with as couples, sometimes two sides. Your social life has really changed. Your family structure, that's the obvious change, right? But it's not just for you. If your children, your kids' family structure is changing because, there may be step family at some point soon. And plus your parents aren't living together anymore. Your own job, your own professional life can switch. I know I lost my job 6 months after my marriage ended. So my whole life was in flux. So to focus, for the rabbinic focus to be only on the mamzer issue, to me is like an indicator. It's a symptom that we're not really thinking about divorce in the way that it needs to be thought about. We're not thinking about it in a way that, like, what do we need to be? How do we need to be supporting those among us? It's like we picked this one very symbolic issue, but we didn't pick the actual ways that divorce impacts families, in fact, impacts individuals, which are numerous. And what are the reasons for that? What do you think? I'll put that as a question. Like, why did we go right to like a religious status issue as kind of the primary way of support, and kind of not focus on what's actually happening to the person? Anybody want to take a crack at that? So any thoughts?
This isn't exactly an answer, but I'm stunned, given, especially in the Jewish world today, when there's just this abundance of ritual development, expansion, and or bringing things back to light that were, just kind of in the mystical corners, but that there isn't more than what you're saying being offered, especially like in the Reconstructionist movement, where there is all this development of ritual experience that, there isn't something addressing, the leaving of the home and all of it. It's stunning. I mean, I'm sure that you've expressed feeling that yourself.
Yeah, yeah, right. The leaving of the home, or the entering into a new home, right? Like, yeah. There's actually, it's because the life of a divorce is actually very stretched out. That actually can account for, a marriage is very like, there's a moment you get married, right? You're under a chuppah. It happened. You're under the marriage canopy. There's an officiant. There's the rings. There's the all the ritual of getting a marriage. It's on one date, but a divorce is like spread out. It can be spread out over years. It can happen quickly in a few weeks even, but like it's the impact of divorce kind of has a domino effect, and it's hard to know when is the moment of divorce. Joe, go ahead. Well, it says Joe's iPhone. I don't know if that's Rabbi.
Yes, sir. But you can call me Joe, no worries.
Okay.
Let me lower the hand. There we go. Yeah, I don't know much or that much about the other movements. My background is more in the traditional world, but so I'll speak from that world. And what I have found often, especially in the more black hat. I mean, I was in the black hat, long curly Q
Oh wow.
world. And one thing that we didn't do very well, not there now, so maybe there was a miraculous change, but what we don't do well in that world, and I don't think we do it well in the human realm, but is in Orthodoxy, there's not this openness of heart where you can just come and share with your friends and family. It's not, I mean, it's there to a certain extent. Of course, they have Rahmanas, they have mercy on you, but this discussion that you're trying to have right now, and the ritual engagement that we can make ritual relevant to our lives. It's really not their focus. It's with Hashem's help, but that heart to heart talking and engagement and surrendering is not that common. It is present among some for sure, but not in the real black Williamsburg, Borough Park, Mea Shearim. Those worlds don't have that openness to dialogue. At least that's my thought in response to your question.
You just reminded me of an unbelievable story I heard. Uh, this happened, I think, in the '70s when there was divorce was kind of beginning to kind of multiply, and it wasn't It was all over the Jewish world too, including the Orthodox world. Um, a man came to visit the seventh Lubavitcher Rebbe,
Mm.
Schneerson,
Yeah.
in 770. Probably the most one of the most, I'd say, top five most famous rabbi of the 1900s. Went to visit him to say to him, um, why? What are we going to do about this divorce epidemic? People are getting divorced. Their marriages are being torn up. People don't know how to stay in marriages. They don't know how to deal with conflict, and um, it's ripping our communities apart, and we don't know how to deal with it. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe himself, and living in a non-traditional family, maybe people don't know this about him, but he didn't have any children. And one of the reasons why there was no eighth Lubavitcher Rebbe, he was the last one, is he didn't have any children. For whatever reason, maybe there was infertility issues with his wife, but they never, I'm sure they would have had children. They never had their own children. So he saw things a little differently, um, in terms of how he looked at the family. And when the guy came to him, kind of expecting him to empathize, and be like, "You're right. We got to do something. We got to figure this out and make sure people understand the value of marriage." He didn't say that. He said, "People are living longer lives now. Our lifespan has increased. It's gonna perhaps we've been given this extra time in our lives to find our soul's truest calling," indicating that, like, our with the advance of longer lives, people used to live, till 40 and 50 years old. Now who are living to 70, 80, 90 degrees. Like, there's a new lease on life. He was suggesting that perhaps, like, divorce is okay. It actually may make sense. And he so anyway, I was stunned when I heard that story, that the Lubavitcher Rebbe would say that divorce was okay and it wasn't going to destroy us, and we it is part of our tradition, and that's everything I have found, as I've looked, as I studied this, agrees with that assessment.
Yeah. That's very. Did you know this person?
The person who told me the story, I knew. I didn't hear it
Well, I
from.
hope it's not accurate. That's painful because Lubavitcher Rebbe he was a great man, and that's very sad if that was his actual response. It's painful.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure it wasn't a popular thing, but he was known for saying, not popular things. Uh, you know, um, and that's the job of a spiritual leader. Sometimes you don't say what people want you to say. You say what you feel you need to say. Um, uh, so yeah, so I want to talk about rituals. I want to get into the conversation about rituals, what they look like, what I want to talk about the traditional get, which is the Jewish divorce, but I also want to talk about other possible rituals. Uh, 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 what might a ritual look like today, given that there's, like, so many stops along the path of one's marriage ending. What might a meaningful ritual look like today? That's not a replacement for the get, but an addition. Um, I don't know if any of you saw at the end of the year in 2024, the New York Times had, like, what's in for 2025. They had, like, a top 10 list, and one of them was divorce parties. Was one of the things that was in for 2025. Is becoming a thing. Divorce has gotten so normal in the secular world that people celebrate now. Uh, and it's funny. People say, we'll talk about this as well, but what's people don't even know what to say, right? To someone going through divorce, do we congratulate them? Do we say, "I'm sorry for your loss"? Right? Is divorce worthy of condolences or mazel tov? Um, right? Both, either, neither. When my mom approached the chief rabbi of Scranton, where we were living when I was 2, when they got divorced, he's actually still the chief rabbi of Scranton 50 years later. Um, he she approached him about what to do, and he said divorce is bittersweet, and I like stayed with her. There's a death and a rebirth that's happening. It's so you can't just say it's sad because it's also something new is happening. We can't just say it's good because there's real loss in that. So, one of the things I'm interested in teaching people is like, what does emotional intelligence around divorce look like, and what does emotional intelligence around talking to people who are divorced look like? What is what do we say? What might we say that would be helpful to hear? I remember the first time I heard something helpful, I got a lot of, I'm so sorry to hear that. Actually, I got one today, and I'm not sorry, but I'm so sorry to say, and I just kind of let it wash over me, and I really struggled with that response to the news. If I shared it, made me not want to tell people, actually, because I didn't want pity in that moment. Some people might want pity. I didn't want pity. And I feel like I'm sorry. There's like a lot loaded in there. Like, what are you sorry about? Are you sorry that I shared this news with you? Are you sorry that I couldn't save my failing marriage? What are you sorry about? I trust people have good intentions, but it's just that line didn't land well on me. The first time I got a good response to telling someone that I was getting divorced, it was actually a rabbinical student, and she said to me, "Wow, that's a big deal. What would be a helpful thing to say?" She asked me, "What would be a helpful thing to say?" I said, "You asking me that is a helpful thing to say. You saying, 'Wow, that's big,' couldn't have said it better myself. It is big, and it doesn't need to be value laden with it's a good thing or a bad thing. It's just a thing. It's huge, and there's good things about it and bad things about it. There's sad things about it, happy things, funny things, serious things, miserable things, right? It's a life event. It's a life cycle event. And actually, I think in much of the Jewish world, it's not seen as a life cycle event. It's seen as like kind of like almost like a traffic accident, like something that you slow down to kind of look at, but then you keep driving, right? You're driving on the highway, you have to kind of look over. You don't really want to get too involved, but you're also curious. But it's actually like it's a real life event, like a wedding, a death, a birth, conversion, bar mitzvah. Divorce is on that list, and we don't think of it as such. And in the Jewish community, when someone has a life event, someone has a baby, someone's parent dies, someone, has a bar mitzvah, like the community mobilizes, the community like comes together, and it's like, how can we help you? How can we usher in this holy, sacred moment of your life? And I think because we don't think of it as a life cycle event, the community doesn't know how to mobilize. We don't know how to show up at that moment. It's too confusing. We don't know what to say. We're afraid of taking sides. We're afraid of it being contagious. It might put a mirror up at our own relationships and reflect things that we don't want to see about ourselves. It's a landmine, a divorce. So, but we don't see it as a life cycle event, and that's very interesting. And I wonder why that is. Given that it's like I said, like we said last week, it's in the Torah, it's in the Talmud, it's in our tradition, but it doesn't get that same like holy status that another life cycle. What are you gonna say, Eliyahu?
So I'm curious because you're leading us towards potential rituals, things that could be done. I'm curious what you've come up with that to address this issue and how people responded to it. What's worked?
Sure. I'll tell you a couple of things that I did. I've done a bunch of things. So, if you've ever been to a Jewish wedding, like a traditional Jewish wedding, or in some of the more Hasidic communities, they have something called a tish, which is they basically late at night with usually some alcohol and a bunch of people sitting around a table. They sing and they tell stories. Usually there's like a rabbi who kind of holds it and shares words of wisdom, words of Torah. And it's very common, even today, to have a wedding tish. It's like the last gathering of people before you get married, before you go under the wedding canopy. The last gathering is just like a celebration, a tish. And so I thought to myself, I came up, I was like, I had this idea. I was like, what if there was a divorce tish? We can have a tish before we get married. If we can like celebrate with our loved ones, be witnessed, be seen, be given words of wisdom, you know, give a l'chaim, right? You know, a toast, and be together in this transition moment, right? You know, if we can do that before a wedding, why can't we do it at the other end of that? Why couldn't we have a divorce tish? So I actually created a divorce tish ritual for myself. I did it online actually because it was during the pandemic, and I got about 100 friends and family to come, and it was a little more difficult because it was online. Didn't have the same kind of spiritual energy, but we sang, and people shared wisdom from their own divorces, their own marriages, their own breakups, and it was a beautiful, incredible evening. It kind of helped launch Jews Get Divorced, and so that was something I created. Oh, one other thing that came out of it is, there's in many of the other life cycle events have their like wedding music, right? Their wedding nigunim. They're like wordless melodies. There's a wedding nigun. We don't have any divorce melodies. Like what's the divorce playlist in Judaism? Not really is one. So these are the beginning. These are the things I've been thinking about. Give you another example of a ritual I did. I think I told you last week that kind of the biggest imprint of my own childhood was that my parents couldn't get it together, and I had 2 bar mitzvahs, one for each of them. And when my son, this is already 2 years ago, he turned 13, and his parents were together, I was like, is this going to happen again? Is lightning going to strike twice? Is my son going to have 2 bar mitzvahs? Thank God we were able to pull it together, and we got a parent coordinator, so kind of like a third party to help us figure things out, including money and location and rabbi. We had a Chabad rabbi, actually. It was a Thursday morning bar mitzvah. And we made all the decisions together somehow, because it was not totally amicable. And leading up to it, my nervous system was a wreck, because I had my own baggage around my own bar mitzvah experience to kind of process, and I realized I did not want that coming out on the day of the bar mitzvah itself. I needed my own place as a parent who'd been divorced, who's divorced now, to kind of discharge my own nervousness, my own anxiety around my son's bar mitzvah. I didn't want to bring it to the day. I wanted the day of the bar mitzvah to be about him. Everybody says we want this to be about the child. Everybody says that, but it's much harder to do it. So I got a few friends together, and I went to the mikveh. I went to a Jewish ritual bath, which is like a common place to go for purifying. But I didn't just do that. I also wrote a few letters. I wrote a letter to each of my children, to my ex, not letters that I would ever read to them, but letters just saying, this is what happened to me. This is what I bless you with. And I just, I read those letters to 5 friends, had a good cry, and kind of just like just left it there and went into the mikveh, purified myself, and on the day of the bar mitzvah, like I had taken care of myself. I had kind of not let my own anxieties and fears and anger at my own parents kind of let that run the day. I dealt with that. One of the letters I wrote was to my parents too, and that was a real healing for me that I was able to do that. Another thing at that bar mitzvah that was helpful is there's such thing at a Jewish wedding, a traditional Jewish wedding, as a shomer, like someone that guards you in the hours before the wedding. I had a shomer for the divorce bar mitzvah. I had someone kind of watching me, kind of just like taking care of me a little bit, just like helping me make sure that I was like grounded in this moment and could kind of be there fully for him. And it was, these things, I think they made a tremendous difference for me and hopefully for the day itself. Those are just a couple examples. But I've heard of other people doing like, people have they've taken their ketubas, their marriage documents, made art projects out of them. Because what do you do with that document, right? You've had this ketubah on your wall representing your marriage document you signed. Like, you don't want to just destroy it. I mean, some people destroy it. Some people will throw it in the fire. That's a ritual, powerful ritual. But some want to like just repurpose it. Because maybe you're still in relationship to this person who's the mother of your child or the father of your child, right? Right? You might want to just kind of transform the marriage document into something that represents who you are now. So I've seen people do like, they've like cut up their ketubah and turn it into like paper mache or something. I've seen really beautiful art done with that. What else? Priya Parker, who's a well-known author, she's not Jewish, but she wrote a book about how to really utilize space and create rituals. And she had a whole post in the New York Times maybe, I don't know, a year ago, like half a year ago, on like all these divorce rituals that she saw. I actually like wrote it all down, just because people are hungry, but they're not creating rituals because divorce often feels like just a bunch of fires that you have to put out, and it's not seen as a life event that's worthy of being held. If your money and your friends, if your money situation is changing and your home is changing and your friend groups are changing, like you're just trying to recalibrate. It's hard to like be intentional about like intentionally moving into that time of your life. Yeah.
I wonder if one of the unique aspects that makes divorce difficult to ritualize is that you have potentially two people, one of whom or both of whom who don't want to have anything more to do with one another. They don't want to engage in any ritual. I mean, I had that experience when I brought it up with my ex about doing something, and the response was negative. And I understood it also was kind of disappointing because I thought, well, wouldn't it be beneficial to us to do something to help us move through this? And at the time, she didn't feel that way, and maybe she never will, but I've still felt like it would be good.
Yeah. I see. Hold on, I just want to respond to that. So that's the key thing that a ritual person has to help decide. It's like, should the ritual involve both people? Are they amicable enough or interested enough in doing that together, or should the rituals just be separate, or just for the person who needs it? And the answer is, it depends on what the need is and what the situation is. All of my divorce rituals were just for me. My ex was not involved in any of them. All right, Patricia, yeah.
Well, and actually, you're touching on what the thoughts that I was having as you were speaking. In terms of a ritual, I was thinking really, when you were describing a celebratory, Mazel Tov type of event, I'm going, well, it kind of depends on whether you're the person that sought the divorce or if the divorce was imposed upon you. I know in my case, divorced twice. Neither time did I see it coming. And you might wonder, how is that possible? But anyway, that would take us into another route. Um, but neither time did I wish a divorce. And so when I became a single parent overnight with everything fractioned, my time was no longer was shortened. Almost lost my house, did almost lost the car, did lose a car. Uh, I had to be in two places at the same time because I was working full time. So I would not have been in favor of a celebratory, life-changing moment. Certainly not at that time. Maybe now, 20 years later, but not then. So maybe thinking about not just need, but particular need, maybe a ritual, but a very different type of ritual. If you're the leaver or the one left behind, and it would have to
Yeah.
it'd
Yeah.
have to
No,
be a very flexible ritual to
right.
fulfill
And maybe that's
very
why,
different types of needs.
right. And maybe that's why, divorce rituals haven't proliferated, is because it takes a level of emotional intelligence to really understand the situation at a high level. Like, you're right. I would say a lot of divorce rituals are not celebratory, but some of them are. Or some of them have a celebratory aspect of it. I mean, this is the thing about life cycle events. They do share a kind of a common quality, whether it's a birth or a bar mitzvah or a death or a divorce. Like, they're they're um, they're not one thing. They're not like, even a death. Like, it's sad, it's loss, but there's also like it's often a celebration of life, right? You're celebrating the life of a person. There's definitely room for that in the expansive Jewish rituals around death to honor that person, right? You'll go to a shiva sometimes, or a funeral, and there's laughter because you're remembering the funny parts about this person too. So too in every life moment, there's like the pain and the joy and the sadness and the loss and the overwhelm. But there's also like moments of freedom and change, and each of them are so different. So in divorce, because it kind of it's kind of it's a little paradoxical in how. Not paradoxical. Right, the bittersweet quality. It's tough to pin down what exactly we should be feeling in this moment as we're separating. I want to take a few minutes to just go over the traditional get language. I want you to see the traditional language of a Jewish divorce, which is called a get. We last week we looked at the ketubah, the Jewish wedding, traditional Jewish wedding document. Now we're going to look at the traditional divorce document. In the last weeks, we saw in the ketubah how it actually has a clause about divorce. So that was very interesting. Really surprised. A lot of Jews don't realize that there's divorce in the wedding document. So I'm going to share the screen here. Okay, so this comes from the Mishnah, which is like the rabbinic source from 200, 300 of CE, like the kind of the first major written down tradition after the destruction of the temple. Once we were kind of, this is like the new Judaism, the Judaism of the rabbis, not the biblical Judaism, but the Judaism that was given to us today. The Mishnah is like the first compilation and the first conversations of rabbis saying, what should Judaism look like today? So here's what they say a get should look like. And this is from the Mishnah is also the first part of the Talmud. It says the basic essential element of a bill of divorce is you are hereby permitted to marry any man. Rabbi Huda says there's also another essential sentence. You shall have from me is a scroll of divorce, a letter of release, and a bill of dismissal, which comes right from the Torah. Bill, that's a direct reference to the Torah portion that mentions it that we talked about last week. There's a physical scroll or a written down transfer of status. And obviously, it's only talking about men. That changes over the centuries, but that's what it was then. This is 1,800 years ago. But the key phrase in there is the scroll of divorce, a letter of release, and a bill of dismissal. And so that's in the Mishnah. And then the ketubah, the traditional text of the ketubah, is also in Aramaic, not Hebrew, Aramaic with Hebrew letters, has the same language. This shall be for you a bill of dismissal, a letter of release, and a document of absolution or divorce in accordance with the law of Moses and Israel. So when you have a divorce is the way it's done is it's similar to a conversion. You have a court of 3 rabbis. It's called a Beit Din, which is another word for a court. And 3 rabbis are together, and they have a scribe write this out. This is just a piece of it, but they write out this traditional text, and the man signs it and gives it to the woman. Similar to how the man gives the woman the ketubah, the marriage document, when they get married. So he also gives her the get. And there's a couple other things that are very similar, but the language is interesting. That it's going to be, you're getting a bill of dismissal, which is alluding to the finances of it, a letter of release, and a document of absolution. So that's, just wanted to show you that text. And what I really want to get into is what I call the central spiritual gesture of the divorce. What is like the essence of the divorce? We've seen some of the text. We've talked about some of the issues that come up. But what's the essence of a divorce document in Judaism? And it really you see it in the ketubah, in the get, in the language. It's the idea of release. We are releasing our partner so they can marry somebody else. We are releasing them from the bounds, from the agreement that we made. We are releasing them from the agreement that we signed how many years ago. We are releasing them. That's concept of release. There's really like something that was like seen as like one is now a union is now being kind of let go, and but it's not just by accident being kind of separating. There's a permission to release, and that's actually a profound spiritual idea, to purposely release somebody or to feel released. And like anyone knows who's been in a high conflict divorce, there's a lot of things you hold on to, whether it's your property, whether it's your anger, your resentment, your disappointment, right? Your dashed hopes. But the Jewish concept of divorce is that there is this multi-layered release happening, and it's So I'll give you another example of a ritual that I've done, and it's been shared with me. I actually didn't do it myself, but I would have. I was attracted to this ritual. Is a colleague of mine worked with a couple who was too high conflict to have a divorce together. So he asked them to write letters of release to each other. to write a letter. What do I release you of? And they weren't going to share these letters with each other. At this point, things were too high conflict. But it's just to write it out and to read it, to share it with somebody, with the rabbi. Like, what are you being? What do I want to release of you today? What do I need release from you? So it was two questions. What am I releasing, and how do I need to be released from you? And those were the questions that kind of animated the divorce. And so I think, there's real deep wisdom in our tradition that's not so obvious around how, like, what are the questions we might want to be asking? What are the things we want to be thinking about from a like a holistic perspective? Like, what are the conversations we need to have to get to something that may feel impossible, but to get to a closure? Some people never get closure. But could we what would help us lead to closing that chapter of our lives? What would help us, go from, not to see like this as a regretful period of our life, but just as a period that was, and then it ended, and then we started a new period. The other, I guess the last ritual I'll mention, another one that I've been, thinking about a lot. Eliyahu has heard me talk about this, is when we finish a book of the Torah. When we finish the book of the Torah, the whole synagogue is a dramatic moment. The whole synagogue stands up, and the right before the last line of the last line of that book, this whole synagogue stands up, and the person who's reading the Torah reads the last line, and the synagogue, everybody shouts out, "Chazak, chazak, v'nit chazek." May you go from strength. May we all go from strength. May you go from strength to strength, and may we all be strengthened. That's literally what that means. Chazak, chazak. And, I think of it as like the perfect blessing for someone going through a divorce. You're ending one chapter, you're beginning a new chapter, and you're praying for strength together. I'd love to see kind of that transformed into a communal ritual. Like, how could we bring divorced people and give them like a little bit of love in a communal setting? That could be one of the spots that we do it. All right, just threw out so much of you. We got a couple minutes. I'd love to get your reactions and thoughts. Do we want to hear from anyone that hasn't spoken? Robert or Alan or Donna?
People can put stuff in the chat too. I know, Robert, your mic isn't working, so
Okay.
feel free to pop something in the chat.
Yeah. Otherwise, anybody.
I love that idea of the chazak chazak, by the way, because it involves the community, and it's, it can be one of those things where it's like with other rituals, it's not like good, bad, it's just go in strength, both of you, and it's sort of an obligation to have to hear it and have to say it. That's one of the beautiful things about some of the rituals. It's like, it's not, you have to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's sung. It's like chazak chazak v'nit chazek, and then the person reading the Torah repeats it, so that it's like the blessings of the community have all gone into the one person who's like we're gonna finish this chapter with strength, so that we can have the strength to get to the next chapter. There's such good symbolism. The group can support the individual, even when it's hard.
Well, it's a good reminder, I think, too, to the people saying it, that you also maybe have an obligation to help with supporting show up.
Yeah. And, Patricia, what you were saying, I mean, divorce can be so overwhelming and difficult and like energy, like, beyond what you think you have a capacity to do, especially, when your responsibilities multiply. And so, the question I'm always asking is, what would it look like if the community knew how to show up to help take care of people as they're transitioning to this? Just reading Robert's comments. The strength to accept the reality of challenging situations in life and accepting with grace. Yeah. Yeah. Strength to surrender. Yeah. Right. And we didn't talk about this much, but it's like facing, you know, putting something in the communal space. I think, ironically, people don't do it because they're ashamed, but to actually put things in a public space gives it a much more of a chance that the shame won't dominate the experience if done with with intelligence and held well, obviously. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Rabbi.
Yeah, one thing that I think you, I don't know if you'll agree or not. Many people aren't ritually oriented in Judaism, where we, especially in the Reconstructionist, well, it's not true, in the Reform, certainly, and Reconstructionist is mixed from the ones that I've met. And to try and bring people into ritual engagement when they don't even appreciate ritual in their own sacred lives, it's a hard sell. And I think that's our I try in my teachings to to emphasize the importance of not just faith, but of ritual engagement, because it really can have a powerful impact. And I think you're on a very insightful course, but I don't know if people's willingness to follow is that great, because we just simply, many don't understand the importance and the power of ritual. But kol hakavod to what you're trying to do, and I hope they hear. Here's a joke for you. I hope they get it.
Nice.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
That was kind of funny for me. You should hear most of my jokes. That was pretty good. I saw
Totally.
AC laugh at that
There's a
one.
lot of good there's a lot of good got to get the jokes while the getting is good.
Robert had that comment, being strong for yourself as well as others. I was in the military, and the old military adage, embrace the suck, comes to mind.
Mm, yeah.
I thought of something in a lot of, traditionally in a Shabbat service, in a Sabbath service, there's that time of Mishaberach, and people are invited to say the names of someone who needs healing, or when we say Kaddish. And I was just thinking, what if there was something like that? Like, stand if you're comfortable, if you've been through a divorce or you're going through a divorce, or think of someone who's going through one and needs healing and chazak in that moment, and roll that into a Shabbat service as a part of, like, addressing those things. Death, refuah, because it's like you said, it's got all these elements to it. Like, you could do Misha Berach Kaddish mashup. Thank God I'm done with that, and
Right.
also
Right.
I
Yeah.
wish everybody well.
Totally. Right. There's a lot we can do. I mean, one thing I've discussed with a couple of synagogues is like, what would a divorce mentorship program look like, where someone who's been divorced for many years kind of is assigned to meet once a month with someone going through it now. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that's another. There's all kinds. The sky is limitless. We just have to kind of acknowledge that
Yeah.
it's real and that we have an obligation. Um, uh, I think the feelings are real. Uh, the shame is real, and uh, we're not going back to a period of time where people aren't gonna, where people, the I think the happily ever after myth that we live in is that's everybody's fate. It's just like that's, we have Disney for that. Anyway,
Maybe I'll get inspired by this, and the next time we have a in-person Shabbat service at Temple Aaron, I'll I'll pull that one. I'll pull something like that together. And
Well, make it on a Chazak week, and then you have it built in for you.
nice, nice.
The next one is May 8th,
Okay.
May 9th, May
Yeah.
9th. Uh, anyway, thank you guys so much for inviting me to do this, and I hope it was interesting and gave you something to think about. And I'm happy to be a resource. My website is jewsgetdivorced.com.
Hmm.
Uh, and yeah, I'd love to, be a resource to you. Um, so,
Thank you. Thank you so
Eliyahu
much.
knows how to reach me.
Yeah. Yeah. If anyone comes to mind, or yeah, absolutely. I mean, you now gotten to know Reb Ezra a little bit, and beautiful soul and wise person. And thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciate it. Really enriched our experience, our community.
Thank you. All right. Best to you all.
All
Good
right.
night.
Yes, thank you.
You.
Thank you. Take care, Rabbi. We'll see you all. Patricia will be in touch.